Hello YouTube, Sidekick here with another First Impressions video. Today we're branching out a little bit. We're taking a look at the SU-25. Now, of course, the SU-25T is the original DCS gateway truck because it comes free when you download DCS. I decided to back up a little bit and take a look at the actual SU-25, which is available through famed Flaming Cliffs for a couple of reasons. First of all, it is the earlier model of the SU-25. So when you step into the SU-25T, you're getting a lot of things that are part of the later versions of the aircraft, including a HUD and a bunch of things like that. So I thought maybe we'd go back to the SU-25 and take a look at the more basic airplane before we talk about the SU-25T, because we are going to talk about the SU-25T in the series as well. The other reason, frankly, for doing it this way is because the SU-25T has a bit of a reputation, well-deserved reputation, for flying, well, a bit like a brick. So I think the SU-25 is a better place to start if you're actually looking for a first DCS aircraft, and it's pretty accessible. The online sale going on right now, it's available for something like $10 to $15 US. So I think it is a good place to start. If this is your first experience of DCS and maybe even your first experience of flying a jet fighter simulator, then I think the SU-25 is an interesting place to start, and that's why I decided to do a first impression video of it. So these videos are going to be aimed either at experienced DCS flyers who've never tried the SU-25, but probably more importantly for people who are coming to DCS for the first time, and maybe with a warbird background, since that's where an awful lot of the sims have focused until DCS. So you can see we're up and flying and heading down the coast here. Now you can see that the aircraft is buffeting, and that's because I'm doing a little test here. Notice, haven't even gone over the instruments, but if you notice the airspeed indicator located in the upper left there, we're well above that white marker, which is actually the max speed indicator. So one of the things I wanted to try with the SU-25 was to check out that maximum, what happens when you exceed that maximum speed, and I can say pretty comfortably, I don't think it's something you want to do very often. The flight performance really starts to get nasty when you get too much above that. So now we're just going to go up, see how the aircraft does in a climb. It's doing pretty well. We're losing speed, but not dramatically. We're heading past almost 8,000 feet, 2,500 meters. And there we're getting towards speed where we want to roll out. So my first impressions of the SU-25 is that at least empty, it doesn't handle badly. It's not quite as agile as some, for instance, the A4. It does seem, and it's not doesn't have the power to weight ratio clearly that the F-86 does. It doesn't accelerate exactly the same way, but as you can see, in level flight in a clean configuration, it has ample power to exceed its maximum speed in a straight line. So it does have enough power. It is typical of jet aircraft. And let's face it, jet aircraft with slightly older engines. The SU-25's engines were product of the 70s, probably. And they aren't as responsive as some of the newer ones do. So once you push on that throttle, you can expect it to take a while before you see the effect. And this is certainly one of the things you will need to get used to if you're coming from a warbird. Jets have a lot more power, but at least the earlier jets, it takes a little while for you to get access to that power. So if we take a look at the instruments very quickly, down the left-hand side there, we have the airspeed indicator, and we also have an altimeter. And next to the altimeter is the artificial horizon and the pitch indicator. And then to the right of that is the vertical speed indicator, which I'm finding is an important gauge to keep your eye on in the frog foot. Other than that, we're really not going to be using many of the other gauges below the artificial horizon is a compass. We're not going to need that very much. So we'll have another video where we go over the cockpit in a little bit more detail. For now, we're just kind of toasting along here at something around 10,000 feet. Sort of at the nominal cruise speed. We're not anywhere near maximum throttle to maintain that. In terms of responsiveness, the SU-25 does feel a little bit heavy on the controls. Roll rate particularly is not particularly rapid, especially compared to something like the A4. Just taking a look around, get fairly good visibility out of the cockpit. But it definitely belongs to an older generation compared to, for instance, the A10 or the Harrier or the F-18, where you have much better visibility out of the cockpit. So, in a sense, the SU-25 is kind of on that cusp, that change of generations. It was designed in the late 60s and early 70s, and most of its combat history is in the 1980s, of course, in Afghanistan and some other regional conflicts. In fact, one of the reasons I wanted to look at the SU-25 is because it is another one of those aircraft in DCS that has actually seen a fair bit of combat, which not all of the jets in DCS have. The SU-25 got quite a substantial workout during the Russian occupation of Afghanistan, and we'll probably take a look at that kind of thing as we talk about it. The other interesting thing about the SU-25 is that it's one of the few jets for whom the Caucasus map is home turf. SU-25s have participated in a variety of capacities in the regional conflicts in this region, so this is actually an area where SU-25 operations have actually taken place. You can see I've put the air brakes on because the dive brakes, because I really don't want to exceed the maximum exceed speed, which I think would be pretty easy to do in a dive, especially again in a clean configuration. It's pretty well behaved in a dive, doesn't mind coming out at the bottom. As I was saying, the SU-25 was designed in the 1960s and 70s. It was designed to be a low altitude, low speed, close air support aircraft, very much in the tradition of the Russian Sturmovik from the Second World War. So if you're coming from flying IL-2s in the IL-2 franchise, then the SU-25 should definitely be one of your first stops. So we're coming up on an area here that I call the trench. If you follow my channel, you know that I spent a lot of time flying up and down this low-level ingress route as part of my Haiphong Harbor series, but also as part of a bunch of other videos I've done. This route is kind of the place I like to take new planes for a test drive because I'm used to flying it, I'm used to how it feels, so it's a good chance for me to see how the airplane performs and compare it to other aircraft. So we're just going to go around the headland here in a minute, and then we're going to take a low-level flight up the valley. So again, one thing to note about the SU-25, it does not have an autopilot. The SU-25T implements a bit of that kind of stuff, but the SU-25 does not. Doesn't have a HUD, obviously. There's nothing on screen, just the steam gauges. It is not fly-by-wire. You are directly connected to control surfaces in this aircraft, so very much flies in that way, like even an older Warbird, but certainly like the 50s and 60s type jets, like the Sabre or the Skyhawk. All right, here we are coming into the trench. One thing I can say right off the top is that it's pretty comfortable flying at low level compared to something like the Sabre, which is a bit more agile, but a little bit more of a handful at low level. One thing it does seem to have a little bit of a tendency that's slightly alarming to sink, even when the nose is high. You need to make sure you're not getting behind on the power curve if you want to keep the nose up. But overall, it tracks very well. It's very comfortable. It's very at home, obviously, in this environment. My gold standard for this is the A10, which just loves being low. Some of the other aircraft are pretty good at low level, but nothing is as good as the A10, and the Frogfoot's pretty close to that. The controls don't feel quite as crisp as an A10 because it doesn't have any stability augmentation like the A10. You do have to watch that you don't get into any kind of oscillation, and you do definitely have to be standing on that rudder, which is something that's not a feature of newer jets. But overall, it's not really giving me any trouble or giving me any, I'm not nervous flying it at this level. We can fly a little bit lower. It's a good, stable platform, and that's not surprising because that's what it was designed to be. So we're going to take a little bit of a right turn here, head up over the hill, do a little bit of a simulated approach on a bridge that we've bombed before. Alrighty, up we go. Nice, easy pull up here into around a 30-degree climb. It's good, holds that climb well. Not losing very much speed, even in a pop-up like this. Again, it's a clean configuration. I'm sure carrying a couple tons of bombs will make a difference, but... Okay, we're rolling over, looking for our friendly bridge that we visit so often. We'll come in, take a little roll in and dive on it here in a sec. Definitely going to want to pop the speed brakes out, I think. Just not sure how we're going to do in a steep dive. You can see already that that's going to be one of the issues with the SU-25 is making sure you don't exceed that not exceed speed, because it isn't really all that fast. But with the speed brakes out, it's a very controllable dive. Lots of time to pull out. So I can see that it's going to be a nice stable platform for delivering ordnance, which of course is what it was designed to do and what it has spent its lifetime doing. That's actually one of the really interesting things, one of the things I'm looking forward to about getting to know the Frogfoot, is that it has a truly immense inventory of weapons it can deploy. Nothing like the F-18 or some of the modern jets with all of the smart munitions, but in terms of iron bombs, and particularly in terms of rockets, it has a very impressive inventory. So I'm looking forward to getting to know something about that inventory, because of course I've never flown a Russian aircraft before, at least not in anger. So it'll be interesting to get to learn those weapons a little bit better. Okay, we're going to go back down the trench, see if we can get even a little bit lower, see how it feels down low. Once again, it's feeling nice and stable to me. It's not the most agile aircraft in the world. Once you get it in the groove, it stays there. Doesn't give you much trouble. You have to stay ahead of it, which is, again, typical of its generation of aircraft. One thing to notice if you are coming from warbirds, jets are heavier, and the engines are in general less responsive, although more powerful. So that does mean you have to be thinking a little bit ahead when you're doing flying like this. But as you can see, we can get good and low, and it's not really uncomfortable. Yeah, it's pretty clear this is the kind of flying that the SU-25 was meant to do, and frankly, it's quite a bit of fun in DCS. I'm having a good time. Yeah, so overall my impressions are that it's a fun aircraft to fly at low level. It's not the most agile thing in the world. You definitely need to work to stay ahead of the power curve because of the engines and because of the nature of the design, which is not meant to be that agile. We're definitely going to have to pay attention to stay below that upper speed limit. I can see where that's going to be a feature in the future. But overall, I'm looking forward to getting to know the SU-25. It's got some interesting features, definitely has some interesting weapons, and it occupies a really interesting niche in the transition from the 1960s fighter technology into the 1970s and 80s. And of course, Frogfoots are still in service today. So it's going to be an interesting journey to take a look at the SU-25 all the way from this basic model up through the SU-25T, and maybe try and find some missions to do that were typical of the way that it's been employed. So I'm looking forward to it. Again, as I say, with the autumn sale on now, it's a pretty accessible price. If you're looking for a new experience in DCS or coming to DCS for the first time, I think it'd be worthwhile giving it a shot. So, as always, if you want to see more, make sure you subscribe so you catch the latest videos as they come out. And I'm just going to dive back down here and pull out. Been an enjoyable little first impressions flight. For now, this is going to be Sidekick, signing off.